recently in Taiwan, the weather has been kind of crazy. There have been a few typhoons. There's been a lot of wind, a lot of rain. Maybe in Taichung in the south, things are okay. But up here in Taipei, the weather has been crazy. And so I decided, let's talk a little bit about weather phenomena. A phenomena or phenomenon is one. Phenomena means many. A phenomenon means something that happens that you see in the world. And maybe it's interesting or special, okay? It's something that happens that we can describe, okay? So when we're talking about different kinds of weather, sometimes people say weather phenomena. Ooh, sounds so fancy. So we're going to take a look at some different kinds of weather and what you might see on a weather report. And so, like we said before, if you want to watch some videos that are made for native speakers to practice your listening, you could try watching a weather report. And so go on YouTube, search weather report, and see if you can understand what they say. So today we're going to take a look at a few words that you'll hear when people are talking about weather, and that might help you follow a weather report or talk to your friends or talk to whoever. Now this is a little bit like science class. It might be a little bit tricky, but hopefully we can learn it in a fun, simple way. I won't get too complicated, okay? Well, a little bit complicated, but hopefully you guys enjoy what we learn. So, weather phenomena. What are some things we need to know about weather phenomena? First up, we need to understand two key words. One is the atmosphere. Another is the climate. Now, these two words are similar, but they're kind of different. And they're words you'll hear a lot, all the time. So the atmosphere. The atmosphere means all of the air around the Earth. Earth is a big ball of rock in the middle. Around it, there's many kinds of gases, lots of air. All of that air together and all the clouds and the wind and everything is called the atmosphere, okay? So you can see here, this long, tall thing, that's showing the atmosphere. And it's showing different levels of the atmosphere. And it's all the air around the Earth going up, up, up. And then when there's no more air, then you get to space. Okay? So the atmosphere is talking about the air around the Earth or in the sky. Okay? The other word is climate. Climate means the weather of the world. So when we talk about weather, we often talk about the word climate. Weather is usually for a short time, maybe one day or a week or even a month. Oh, the summer has been really hot. That's the weather. Climate is when you look at weather and talk about it for a long, long time, like 5 years, 10 years. And so in the news, people will talk about climate change, right? And climate change is the way the weather patterns are changing around the world. The climate is changing. The world is getting hotter. There are more storms. All that stuff is the climate, okay? So it's important to know these two words are a little bit different. Atmosphere means the air. The climate means the weather, but over many, many, many years. So today we're going to be talking about things that happen in the climate, okay? So one thing we can learn is something called a pressure system. Now, this stuff is a little bit difficult, a little bit tricky, but this is stuff that you see on the news all the time. And if you try watching a weather report, you'll understand what the heck they're telling you about, okay? So pressure means how much the air is pushing. The air is pushing up and down. And that could be caused by the wind and the heat or the cold, and the air gets squished and stretched and pressed and pushed. So for pressure, we talk about low pressure and high pressure. And you can see on this map, there are all these little red L's. L is for low. This is a very normal thing to see in America on the news. If you watch the news, you'll see this kind of map with L's and H's and lines all over it. I've seen the weather here in Taiwan, but I forget, do they have L's and H's on the screen, or do they have other letters? You guys let me know. So a low pressure area is the L. And what that means is that there's not much air there. The air is not pushed close together. And so what that means is that the wind and storms can go into that area. So a low pressure area usually has like clouds and rain and storms like that. A high pressure area, there's more air, so the air is pushing and it makes the pressure higher. There's more pressure. And if there's more pressure, that pushes things away. If there's like too much air here, the air wants to go out. And so what that does is it actually pushes clouds and rain away. And so you get clear skies like in this picture. These are satellite pictures. So if it's low pressure, you get lots of clouds around you. If it's high pressure, all that air is pushing away the clouds and the water, so you get sunny skies, okay? Now what else do we have? Something that's important is a front. Now a front is another way to say like kind of like a wall, almost like a wall that's moving forward. Imagine like the front of a car. It's moving forward and it can push things, okay? So a front means like a wall of air that's pushing across the country or across the world, okay? And this is a little bit tricky, but on the news, they talk about cold fronts and warm fronts all the time. And so what exactly does that mean? A cold front means that cold air is pushing forward. And you can see these blue lines, these blue triangles. That's a cold front. And that's pushing cold air, pushing across the map. And what that does, when the cold air comes in, it brings rain and storms, okay? And then the opposite is called a warm front. And a warm front is warm air that's pushing across the map. So that's just what it is. A front means a wall of air pushing across. So you can see in this bottom left picture, this is actually a cold front coming in. So the cold front is this line of clouds and they're going to the right side, okay? The cold air is pushing and bringing all this rain. A warm front is warm air that's pushing. You can see in this little like diagram, the warm air is pushing the cold air and it pushes clouds up, up, up. And so it actually pushes away the clouds. Maybe you get some drizzle, some clouds and some light rain, but it mostly pushes away that stuff, okay? So those are fronts. What else do we have? Another important thing is as the weather changes, we get different waves of weather. So those fronts move around day by day, but they might bring a long period of heat or a long period of cold. So if it's really hot for a long time, that is called a heat wave. So I think in California, they had a heat wave that was like a week long and every day was more than 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which I think is 45, something like that. More than 40. It was more than 40 for like a week in California. So they had a crazy heat wave, okay? And we had a bad heat wave here in Taiwan recently. Oh, I have a question. Does a cold front have relation with low pressure and high pressure? Let's see. That's a good question. I'm not exactly sure what the relationship is. I think it's probably a mix of everything together. Like the pressure systems and the fronts probably affect each other, but they might be a little bit different because the fronts are focusing on the temperature, cold air versus warm air. While the pressure systems are focused on how much air is in that place. If it's low pressure, there's not a lot of air, so lots of clouds can come in. High pressure, there's a lot of air, it pushes clouds away. And so, I mean, there's connections between the two, but I'm not sure if one causes the other or which way. So I'm not exactly sure. Good question though. Sorry I don't have a good answer. But okay. We were talking about heat waves. So a heat wave is when it's really hot for a long time. Maybe like 5 days or 6 days or a week or a month even. So heat wave can be really dangerous. The other side is called a cold snap. You could say a cold wave, but in the United States, usually we call it a cold snap. And it gives you the feeling that things are really fast and suddenly it gets really, really cold. So snap, it's suddenly cold. And then it stays cold for a long time. So this doesn't really happen in Taiwan. Not too bad. A little bit. In Taiwan, we get cold fronts, but maybe not a cold snap. I always think cold snap means like snow and ice and freezing cold for like a week. And you can see this car got caught covered in ice in a cold snap. Okay? So yeah, these two are really useful phrases when you're talking about, oh, it's really hot for a long time. There's a heat wave. Oh, it's really cold for a long time. There was a cold snap. Okay? Now, what else do we have? Then we have different kinds of storms. These pressure systems and fronts and these heat waves and cold snaps can cause different kinds of storms. And so some of these you might already know, but one of them maybe not. So a thunderstorm is one kind of storm. Well, every storm brings clouds and rain and wind and lots of weather, right? If it's a thunderstorm, that means it's a strong storm. Whew. It's a strong storm with lots of thunder and lightning and it's really loud and a little bit scary, right? So a thunderstorm, it's a storm with thunder, okay? Another one that happens a lot where I come from is called a blizzard. And a blizzard is a storm where it's so cold that all of the rain comes down as snow. But it's not just a snowstorm. A snowstorm means it snows. A blizzard means there's a ton of snow. Maybe you get a foot of snow in a day or 5 feet of snow in a day. Oh my God. I think last year in my hometown, they got 6 feet of snow in like 1 or 2 days. Crazy. 6 feet is how tall I am. So snow up to my head. So a blizzard can be really scary. Snow sounds nice, but sometimes it can be too much. And the snow comes down in big pieces. It's crazy. Okay. One other thing that has been happening more and more, this is a really scary storm, is something called a firestorm. And these have become more and more common in Australia and in America. Because of climate change and the weather and dry wood and stuff. There have been lots of fires in a lot of different countries. Oh yeah, even France. France, America, Australia, those are the ones in the news, right? But because the fire is so hot and creates all this smoke, the smoke can create a storm and change the weather. That's crazy, right? So fire on the ground can create weather in the sky, and that's called a firestorm. And so that's another thing, like the climate is changing, so there's fire. And because there's fire, now there's storms, which changes the climate more. Crazy stuff, right? Oh, I got a question from Cecilia. Cecilia has, why do we use the word snap in this way? So going back to the word cold snap. Snap. Well, why do we use that word? Because in English, we think that sounds like S-N-A-P. Snap is the sound. Snap. Do you hear it? A little bit. Snap. And so when something happens really quickly, you can say it happens in a snap. Or like, yeah, really fast. Like the speed of me snapping. That's really quick, right? So if there's a quick change, you could say that change happened in a snap. And so cold snap suggests that it became super cold very quickly, okay? And so the word snap comes from the sound. And the sound is very quick, so cold snap means something that happens really fast, okay? Good question. That kind of word is called an onomatopoeia. It's a very long word, but an onomatopoeia is a sound word, like a gun goes bang, okay? Maybe I'll take a note. How do I spell onomatopoeia? Give me a second. English is hard, right? I don't know how to spell that word. Or maybe I do. Wow, good for me. An onomatopoeia. So if you think English spelling is hard, I think it's hard too. Don't worry. Okay. Okay. Oh, I have another comment. Cecilia says, I know this word in 3D software, which is related to a magnet. Okay. So she's saying she saw the word snap when doing art. Now, snap in art means that maybe you have one object here, like a circle, and then you have another object and you're moving this one. If it snaps, it goes snap, it will attach really quickly. So it kind of like clicks onto it really fast. Good question. Okay. So yeah, maybe another week we can talk about other onomatopoeia. Or you can just say sound words. That's an easier word. Onomatopoeia. Whew, 6 syllables. Okay, whatever. Let's keep going. So we talked about different kinds of storms, and then we get to the big storms, the ones that we have to deal with all the time, right? Tropical cyclones. Now this phrase is probably new for you. Tropical cyclone. You don't need to remember this one. We don't use it very often, but I figured I'll tell you what all of these things are called. Together, everything that's coming up is called a tropical cyclone. Tropical means it comes from the tropical part of the earth, which is the middle part of the earth. I think like 热带 in Chinese. The tropics is the hot part of the earth. So tropical means it comes from the hot part of the earth. A cyclone is anything that goes around, around, and around. Kind of like bicycle. Bicycle, the tires go around. So a tropical cyclone is hot weather that goes around and around. Okay? An easier way to say this is a tropical storm. So A storm that spins like a cyclone is called a tropical storm. And these kinds of storms can be small or they can be big. So you guys all know the word typhoon, right? But typhoon is only one kind of tropical cyclone. But are they really different? No, they're all the same. So a little tropical cyclone is called a tropical storm. You can see this one. It's not very strong. You can see that it's just a storm. It's spinning a little bit, but not much. In Taiwan, you might still call this a typhoon, but in English, it's not a typhoon yet. It's just a tropical storm. If it starts spinning faster, like this one up here, that is a tropical storm, but maybe it's a small typhoon, okay? It's starting to spin faster. You can see the lines. And then this one on the bottom right is a big, strong one. It's spinning fast, and you can see that circle in the middle called the eye of the storm. This one is big enough where it can be called a typhoon, okay? So if it's a little tropical cyclone, just call it a tropical storm. If it's a big one, there are two names. Not just typhoon. We have hurricane and typhoon. Oh my God, Kyle, you're gonna kill us. This is very crazy, right? Very complicated. So, actually it's not. Surprise. Tropical cyclone means any of these storms that spin around and around. A little one, we call it a tropical storm. Like this past weekend, it was not very strong, not very scary, so I think it was just a tropical storm, okay? If it gets big, really big, here in Taiwan, we call it a typhoon. In America, we say hurricane. Now, why? What's the difference? Are they different? No, they're the same. They start in the tropics. You can see these charts. They all start down near the equator. The equator is that red line, right? The equator is that red line. What's around it is the tropics. So they're tropical storms. All of these storms start near the equator in the tropics. And then in Asia, they start in the same place, close to the tropics, near the equator. What's the difference between a hurricane and a typhoon? Nothing, just the name and where they happen. Hurricanes happen in the Atlantic. They start in the Atlantic Ocean and they go to America, or to, well, North America, let's say. Typhoons, just another name for the same kind of storm, but they start in the Pacific Ocean and come to Asia. So hurricane and typhoon are two words for the same thing. If it happens in the Atlantic Ocean and goes to America, it's a hurricane. If it happens in the Pacific and goes to Asia, it's a typhoon. But the actual storm is the same. No big difference, okay? So don't worry about the difference, but if you watch the news in America, they'll talk about hurricanes. If you watch the news in Asia, they'll talk about typhoons. But they're the same kind of storm. That big tropical storm that's spinning around and around, okay? Okay, so that's kind of it for weather phenomena for us today. I hope you guys learned something interesting. It's a little bit difficult. It's a lot of science, but this is stuff that everybody knows, right? And you know it in Chinese because if you watch the news, you'll hear these words about the weather during a weather report. So even though this is tricky science, if you watch the news in English, you'll hear words like this. And so it's always good to know, even if it's difficult science words, right? So yeah, that's all our weather phenomena for today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And next time, we're going to talk about a different kind of weather, I guess. I think we can save the rest of it for next time because I don't want to keep you guys up for way too long. But next time, we're going to talk about space weather. This is why I wore this NASA shirt. But we spent a lot of time on our weather phenomena, so let's save space weather for another week. And that's pretty cool. I don't know if you know that there's space weather. Did you know? Well, in space, there's actually wind. There's no rain, there's no thunderstorms, but there's wind and there's dust moving around and different stuff happening. So next time, we can talk a little bit about space weather and what the heck is this picture? Well, quick answer, I'll give you the short answer, is that stars shoot out energy and that pushes stuff around. It's called wind in space. So solar wind, crazy stuff. So next time we can talk a little bit about space weather, okay? So thank you everyone for joining. I hope you enjoyed today's topic. It was a little bit sciencey, a little bit tricky, but people will use these phrases, or you'll hear them when you're watching the news, or hear them when people are talking about the weather, or if you want to say, oh, there was a hurricane in America, or oh geez, a typhoon is coming. All these kinds of words and phrases are super useful, especially if you go like to America and they say, oh, a blizzard is coming. If you don't know what that is, maybe you'll like go to the beach. No, you got to be careful if there's a cold snap or a blizzard. Okay, so let's stop here for today, and yeah, I think that's it for now. Next week we'll take a look at some space weather, and then we'll start thinking about when we can talk about onomatopoeias, sound words, and some other things. And if you have any questions, you're always welcome to get in touch with me. Send me a message, leave a comment, and I'm happy to help. And we can do some other topics that you guys want to hear more about, okay? I do this for you, so if there's something you want to learn, please let me know, okay? So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night, and I'll see you next time, okay? Have a good night, and stay safe out there. Bye-bye.